Hey everybody, Jake here at TrendSpider to go over the weekend video update into August. So not only will this be a weekend update, but it will just be an update looking at the monthly candles for the month of July and what things look like going into the month ahead. So starting with the S&P 500 SPY ETF, you can see here that we did have some really what I like to call status quo changing events this week. And the main thing is really today on Friday, we did finally break above this swing high anchored VWAP zone that has been acting as resistance pretty much since the swing high occurred back in March. And so the fact that we finally broke through this is a really big change in the market dynamics and really just, I think, a sign that we're continuing to be in a melt up. A melt up is simply just one, fear of missing out. So you have people just buying in because we're finally getting some traction to the upside. But two, it's really a deleveraging event. You had so many people that were bearish over the last couple weeks and continued to add to their positions as the market continued to move up. And now they're really starting to feel the pain. They're starting to have to cover their positions, which means that they have to buy back to close their positions, and that's when you get these really, really strong melt ups. So, all in all, the fact that we are above the swing high VWAP is really something that we have not seen in literally like 3 or 4 months. So that's a big change. We also have the falling wedge breakout here on the weekly chart. So shown by this big green circle here, just a huge move to the upside. And then if you look at the monthly chart, we do still have the monthly candles to look at across the board. We kind of bounced exactly where you would expect. We've got this kind of broadening channel here pretty much since the end of the financial crisis in 2009, 2010. And you can see that we bounced right on this support line. You can see here that we do have this COVID kind of breakdown through that channel, but really, we never actually closed more than 2 months below this channel. So it's I like to kind of ignore it and focus on this channel. This is definitely an anomaly, but all in all, we're still kind of bouncing right where you'd expect. And a very strong candle going into the month ahead. A lot of people think August can be a pretty rough month, but a lot of people also look at the summer being a very strong time of the year, which it wasn't this year. So are we going to kind of get a flip in the market dynamics for seasonality? We'll just have to see what happens. Going into the Qs, a very strong week for the Qs as well. Same thing. You can see that we finally broke above the swing high VWAP zone, pretty much shown by this green circle here. And really a great example of SR flips this week. An SR flip is simply an area where you had previous resistance. You can see here we've got this ascending triangle here, resistance, 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 resistance. We broke out, hit the swing high VWAP zone, pulled back right to that previous resistance, which then acted as a level of support. And then we just blasted off the last 3 days of the week. And really breaking above that swing high VWAP zone is a really important thing to note into the week ahead. Now, on the monthly side of things, you can see here that we are still holding this very long-term uptrend. Tested it, even tested the top of it. It's not like we even tested the bottom of it. So just a really strong bullish engulfing candle here on the monthly chart. You can see here, bullish engulfing candle is essentially meaning you open below the previous close. And then you actually close above the top of the body here of the previous candle. So all in all, this candle is essentially engulfing the entire body of the previous candle, and that's what a engulfing candle is. So all in all, some really strong price action on the Qs as well. If we look at the weekly chart, you can see here that we actually broke through this falling wedge a little earlier than the S&P 500 did, and we're just having a nice continuation up from here. If we anchor the VWAP from the all-time highs, that VWAP is right around 336. So that may be the next level that you definitely want to watch above in the short to medium term, maybe a couple weeks to a month above for the Qs. Going into IWM, you can see here that a lot of the same, right? SR flips are the name of the game the last couple weeks. And as I've mentioned in previous videos and in other live streams that I've done recently, an SR flip is simply just an area that has acted as resistance and then flips to support, where a previous area acts as support and then flips to resistance. In this case, resistance all the way down in this downward sloping resistance zone, as I'm highlighting with this green circle. And then you can see that we broke out, pulled back, retested this area, and then continued up. So for IWM, I'm thinking, if we continue up this area above around 191 to 194, which is just simply a horizontal level to the upside, is probably going to be your next target above. And then on the weekly chart, you'll see here that, we moved up perfectly to the COVID low VWAP. So this area has acted as an area of support back in early 2022. We broke down through it. It acted as resistance back in late May and June. And then we're right back at it and closed almost right at this area. So if we can get above and close above the COVID low VWAP, that is going to be a huge status quo changer here for IWM. Now, if you look at the monthly chart, this is just very, very basic technical analysis. We're just using basic horizontal levels, previous resistance from 2018 and then 2020, now acting as a level for price to bounce to the upside. So you can see here in June, we broke down a little bit through this zone, but we did close right in it. And then this month, we just blasted right off of that area to the upside. So all in all, the monthly charts are looking very strong for possibly some follow through going into August. Now, the next one that we'll look at is Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been a great tool and proxy to use for the markets for upside moves. So you can see here, Bitcoin, had this little pennant breakout. I guess you could call it more of a symmetrical triangle breakout earlier in the week. And you can see here the swing high VWAP is right around 26.3 all the way up to around 28 or so. And what's interesting is if you go and you check Ethereum from the same swing high, Ethereum has already hit that area. So Bitcoin seems to be lagging Ethereum. And I would assume that Bitcoin's got some catching up to do in the coming days to even weeks with that upside swing high VWAP, as I mentioned, from 26 to 28K above. Now on the monthly chart, you can see here that we've got this perfect area of support that that has acted as a support zone in the past, just using diagonal zones. And if you're on the monthly chart, it looks like this. If you're on the daily chart, it's just a little more granular, but it's the same exact chart. All in all, we are holding this area very well going into August, and finally, some decent price action for crypto and just the markets overall. And as I mentioned, I think a lot of it is just bears kind of capitulating and helping price move up simply because they have to cover, which means that they have to buy the stocks that they've been shorting back. Apple is our first individual name that we'll look at, and Apple has really just been a huge mover. They had great, or I wouldn't say they had great earnings, but they had a great price response to earnings. And I think what's happening is I think that the market is starting to price in a recession. Well, if the market prices in a recession, that means that it's pricing in probably the Fed not being as aggressive on rate hikes. And that is what the market wants to see. So, all in all, the Fed does have to deal with stagflation. So they still have to lower prices, even if they're lowering economic activity. What they don't want is, they don't want these rate hikes to essentially, slow the economy, but they don't raise rates enough where they stop, prices from going up. So it's a very fine balance that they have here that they have to work around. But all in all, I do think, the market has really priced in a lot of this information that's been kind of talked about over the last several months. And, the fact that we are finally kind of getting some of these weaker economic metrics coming out, I think the market is starting to price in maybe rates not being raised as quickly as maybe the market initially thought. But that's expectations. We're going to see what happens over the next several months. And that's going to be the driver for price, especially with, how the Fed reacts from here. But all in all, just essentially what I'd call a melt up at this point for a lot of these names. Apple's a great example. Back in mid-June, we're at 130. Now we're at 162. That's literally from the bottom, almost 25% plus move to the upside in literally a month and a half for a very, very large company, multi-trillion-dollar company. So all in all, monthly is holding exactly where it needed to. Still, the uptrend is intact. If you look at the weekly chart, you'll see here that we did have Apple clearly leading the way. We had this falling wedge that broke out almost a month ago. So Apple's clearly been leading the market, and it continues to lead the market after breaking through this really crucial horizontal level here that was support back in February, March, broke down, retested in May as resistance, pulled back to new lows, and now we finally broke through it last week, and we're continuing up this week. So, who knows? All-time highs may be in store for Apple here if we continue this type of trend, but we'll just have to see what price action has in store for us. But all in all, hard to say this is bearish by any means. Going into the next one, we have AMD. AMD's also been a very strong mover. So you can see here that we have a pretty just classic downward sloping channel here. We did finally fill the gap today. So a really strong bounce off this lower channel support zone, and then pretty much straight up since then, finally filled the gap. And then your resistance zone is above all the way up to, the low 100s. So just depending on how quickly this can move up, that will depend on kind of where your potential resistance is above. And remember, this is potential resistance. Just because we test this red area, it's only red because it's acted as resistance in the past. It doesn't mean that this area has to be resistance, moving forward. So just keep that in mind. No resistance is resistance until it's proven. No support is support until it's proven. Price action determines that. And until price action determines that, it's potential resistance, potential support. And as you can see here on the weekly chart, we just filled the gap perfectly above as well. That gap is just highlighted here by this orange area here. So all in all, after that bounce from these lows that we saw in 2020 and 2021, perfect reversal here and a very strong move to the upside to fill that gap, and possibly more upside to come to at least the top of the channel here on the daily chart. Now, if you look at the monthly chart, this is something that's really interesting. You have this massive bull flag here, right? You just got, literally about 8 months of or I don't want to say consolidation because we've been kind of like very slowly just been laddering down here. But, if you look back, it seems that price is just consolidating, considering in 2015, we're at $1.63. Now we're at $94. This does seem like just a little bit of a pullback for the next leg up, and a very strong monthly candle here as well. And, you've got a piercing candle here. You opened below the previous month's low, and then we closed way past the 50% level here on the monthly candle from last month. So, for example, a piercing pattern, you really want to close above about 50% of this candle. So 50% of this candle is right around here. So we opened below it. Opened below the previous close, which was around, let's call it 76. We opened the month of July around 75, blasted through, closed way above the 50% kind of retracement of this June candle, and definitely looking relatively well going into August. But until we break out of this flag, we are still within this flag at this point. Next one that we will go over is Disney. Disney is one of those ones that had just gotten absolutely destroyed, but could be one that really, has a decent move to the upside, considering some of the names that we've gone over are seeing a much stronger move to the upside than Disney has so far. Is Disney a laggard? We'll just have to see. But if you just use the swing high VWAP from March 29th, you'll see that we're still below it. So Disney is clearly lagging the market. If you remember on SPY, on the Qs, we're way above this March 29th swing high VWAP. So the fact that we are below it clearly shows that Disney is lagging the overall markets. If we break above this, which is right around 109, 110, then you do have your bigger swing high from February 10th earlier this year. That is way up here in the 117 to 120 area above. So all in all, Disney actually looks relatively decent here. Potential double bottom here on the monthly chart. You can see here that we did not close. We did break intra-month through this area, but we never closed below this orange zone. So potentially a double bottom forming here on the monthly. And then on the weekly, you can see here that we just had a recent huge MACD cross, and this MACD has really just been going straight down for the last almost a year. So the fact that we are having a big cross here on the weekly MACD, I do think that this is gearing up for a potentially bigger move and lagging the overall markets. But as my mentors have told me, and as I know for myself, the market doesn't care what I think. The market is going to do what it's going to do, and price action will determine where we go from here. But the big MACD cross is something to keep in mind going into the weeks and months ahead for Disney. Monthly chart, as I mentioned, we just got the double bottom. But one thing I want to point out on the monthly chart is look at how far down this MACD is. It has not been this far down ever. It's just getting absolutely destroyed. Look at how overextended it was and then overextended to the downside it is now. So some extreme moves here on Disney on the monthly chart makes me think that we could have as big of a move to the upside as we did to the downside. It's not going to happen in a quarter or two. It's going to take time, but all in all, we are at some pretty big extremes on the technical side for Disney. Tesla is the next one, and Tesla is clearly a leader in the market as well. You just use the swing high here from the same exact spot that we've been using it from the other indices and names that we've gone over. Your swing high for Tesla was actually on April 5th. You can see here that we're well above the swing high VWAP zone here. So clearly leading the market. Very strong candle on Friday. And then on the weekly chart, you'll see here that we also have a recent MACD cross that just happened now. So, very strong there. So if we get rid of the MACD and just look at the COVID low volume by price, so essentially we're measuring where volume has occurred since the COVID low, you'll see that we've just got this huge volume shelf that price has bounced off of over the last couple weeks and really moving up quickly. And, at this point, you really just have to use horizontal levels. If you anchor the VWAP from the all-time high, we're pretty much right at it. So if we break above that VWAP from the all-time high, we closed literally almost right at it, then you're going to want to start using horizontal levels, which is pretty much just pivots from on the way down. So here, right here, your next level above is going to be from around 945 up to around 955. And that's simply just this pivot here on the way down when we topped out in April of 2022 and started to hit new lows. So for Tesla, your upside target may be 945 to 955, depending on how precise you want to get. But definitely a very strong candle to end the week and a very strong weekly candle here, closing at almost high of the week. Next one is Microsoft. Microsoft was not looking incredibly good with this kind of this bear pennant here, but we did not actually break the pennant. We closed right at the support zone of this pennant going into earnings and pretty much blasted off since then and haven't looked back. One thing I'll mention for Microsoft, we have a couple gaps above to keep in mind. So we have a gap around 293.25 and then another gap around the gap starts around 293.25 and actually fills around 296.50 or so. And then you have a secondary gap here around 307 all the way up to around 310. So your upside targets would definitely be those gaps if we continue up. But this is a pretty vertical move. It wouldn't shock me to see at least a little bit of a pullback until we continue to move to the upside. But at this point, Microsoft has had a mind of its own the last 3 days of this week. Now, on the weekly chart, you can see here that we have this kind of volume shelf forming here, this area highlighted in green. If you anchor it from the COVID low VWAP, the COVID low, but if you anchor it from the all-time highs, you'll just see this volume in a little more detail. You can see that we have a ton of volume supporting price down here and a really strong move up off of this volume shelf. And then you do have some break-even supply around 287 all the way up to around 290. So these are shares that are going to be back to break even once the price gets to this area. And that may add a little bit of supply on the market, at least initially, which could act as a potential short-term resistance zone above. So let's call it 290 for Microsoft. That is definitely the level that you'd want to see closed above on the weekly chart. And then on the monthly chart, looking very similar to AMD, you can see here that we do have look at, since 2015, we've pretty much just had this straight line up from Microsoft. Pretty classic flag here, bull flag. And essentially the bull flag is just a function of the previous trend, right? here's your flag pull straight up. Here's your flag. And then if we continue up, we could be in store for new all-time highs with with the way things are. Even if the market isn't or even if the economy is in a recession, you have to remember that the economy and the stock market are two separate things. Just because the market's in a recession is not, mutually exclusive or mutually inclusive with the market. Meaning, if you have a recession, that doesn't mean that the stock market has to be going down if the economy is going down too. If the economy is going down, that means that the Fed is likely going to not raise rates as quickly, which is actually good for the markets, the stock market. It works in interesting ways. So just don't get too caught up in a recession and automatically thinking the market's going to go down because of recession. The market, in my opinion, has been pricing in a recession for quite some time. That's why we've seen such a big move down in a lot of these names. So all in all, you got a very strong bull flag here on the monthly for Microsoft. Obviously, price action is going to determine if we break above this bull flag, which is really going to be your signal for potentially higher moves to the upside. But for now, not the bearish kind of setups that we've seen in the past couple months. Last thing I'll touch on is Tesla. We didn't go over the monthly chart for Tesla. One thing I'll mention with Tesla here is we did have this kind of ascending triangle breakdown here on the monthly chart. So we are kind of just retesting this previous support zone, now acting as potential resistance. But until this actually breaks to the upside, we'll kind of see what happens. But your upside resistance or potential resistance, which was previous support, goes all the way up to about $1,000 a share. So you still have some room to the upside before we completely invalidate this previous support acting as resistance. If we close above, let's say, 1,050, then for August, then I think this potential resistance, which was previous support, would be invalidated. But hopefully this video is helpful, kind of getting a broad perspective on the market, not only on the monthly chart for the monthly update going into August, but also just looking at the daily, the weekly. And remember, if you guys do have any questions about TrendSpider, which is the platform that I'm using for all of this analysis, you can always reach out to us on our Twitter page at TrendSpider, or you can just send us a email, hello@trendspider.com. And remember, we do have a 7-day free trial that you can give us a shot. If you need it extended, we can do extensions as well. So, you have a lot of time to check out the platform before you need to pay for anything. We also have one-on-one demos. So you can get a demo from somebody on the customer success team. And so, they'll walk you through any questions you have before you have to, actually pay for a monthly or annual subscription. As I mentioned, hopefully this video was helpful. Everybody have a great weekend, and hopefully it was a good month of July for trading for you. And we will see you in the month of August.